Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. With his health failing, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He found a haven in a working-class district of the city known as Little Russia. There Isaac took on a new name, Ishmael. Within hours of his arrival, he was embroiled in the affairs of a brutal member of Lomidze organized crime family known as Leo. Convinced by a longtime friend, Frankie, to flee from his commitments to the Lomidze family, Isaac found himself hunted by the ruthless Leo. On a rooftop, far from witnesses, Leo murdered Frankie. Only through the use of his skills as a hacker was Isaac able to drive Leo off. Now wounded, alone, and far from help, Isaac depends on the kindness of strangers. What do you do when the only way to save those you love is through the use of proxies? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Proxy by Colbytrax. 18. I now knew how to keep the aphasia shark at bay. A little tweaking of the shunt network's operation parameters, not a full reprogram, just an adjustment here and there, and I would be able to work again. With the software regulating my cranial pressure adjusted, it was time to adjust my hardware responses. The sedatives had seemed to have helped keep my body from overreacting to the excitement of hacking my own shunt network. Maybe they would help with the real work to come. I didn't have any method by which to adjust the dose of the pills any finer than into halves, and I wanted tighter control over the dose than splitting the pills gave. I had very few resources available to me. I had a computer, no help there, a television-turned monitor, likewise useless, a cheap set of pressed aluminum silverware, a cheap plastic drinking glass, and a gallon jug of water. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to come up with a solution that made sense. In the end, it all came down to dilution. I'd grind a pill to a fine powder with the back of the spoon, transfer it to the drinking glass on the back of my butter knife, stir it vigorously with the spoon, mixing it well with the water I had available, and drink a couple sips. The idea was to stretch a single dose over several hours, helping the shunts do their work by slowing down my body's reactions, while not taking enough to impair my performance. I sipped at the foul-smelling concoction until a quarter of the glass was gone. Then I fired up the Opemipo null and began probing the secrets of the red square switch. The work was tedious at first. Establish a connection, hide the connection, verify that the switch was still sending its data to the gnomes of Zurich, check the logs to see if anything had been modified, then check with the data stored in Zurich to verify nothing had changed. The switch was how I left it. Secure against most threats, including police monitoring, but not good enough to keep me out. The security on the switch felt odd, like it was a half-finished project, or as if whoever worked on it only did it because they had to. There was no pride in the setup, just a grudging effort. It felt like the kind of code one received from non-programmers forced to take a programming course. Everything worked, but there was no workmanship, no love, just raw code that did what it had to do because the professor said it had to. I spent an hour scanning the direct connections to the switch, the ebb and flow of network devices announcing themselves as they wandered through the range of the wireless signal served as a marker for the shifting tides of business. I checked the clock. It was dark, supper time. I activated a packet sniffer and watched the data as it streamed from the world to the switch and then into the devices. I set up a monitor subsystem to check for VoIP phones and to grab their IDs. I had Leo's VoIP ID stored in my Opemipo null. If he was sloppy and didn't change it, I had a chance at finding him. I was rewarded within minutes with verification that Leo was within range of the red square switch. Or, at least his VoIP phone was. The encryption of the VoIP network was old, out of patent, and thereby easy for my tools to crack. That was why the VoIP network phones were so cheap. Everything they did was old hat, their secrets broken by generations of hackers before I was born. I cloned the data stream, directing a copy to the Opemipo null and into a playback program. I could hear every conversation he had, both sides, and no one would ever know I was there. While I waited for him to receive a call, I explored the computers that ran the red square. Any security expert will tell you that if you really want your business to be secure, you need to keep its network connections completely separated from your public switch. Whoever ran Leo's network didn't seem to have gotten that memo, or had a reason to allow contact between what was obviously a public network and the private network which ran the red square. After a bit of poking, I began to believe the reason was laziness. Whoever monitored the switch also monitored the business network of the red square. That person probably didn't want to come down to the red square every time the network needed maintenance, or didn't want to bother with another connection. Either way, it was laziness, which I abused. The red square business network controlled every aspect of the enterprise, from security cameras, inventory systems, cash registers, to the sound system. Every aspect of the red square's operations was available to me. I flipped through the camera array, watching as Leo migrated from table to table, never staying long with any one group. I repressed a shiver as the camera caught the predatory gleam in his eyes. When he looked away, I relaxed, just as the people at the tables he left did as his shadow passed from their table to the next. He was an alpha wolf in his domain. How had I not seen this before? He was between tables when his phone went off. He reached for his pocket and drew out a small brick of a phone. My software logged the call and started playing it. The words were in clipped Georgian. I caught nothing from their exchange, except that whatever the context of the call was, the subject matter irritated Leo. I thought of running the voices through a translation program and decided against that. Even with centuries of attempts at real-time audio translation, the results were only useful for the most simple of applications. They worked perfectly for telling the cabbie that you wanted to go to the park. They stumbled when the subject got any more complicated. While most people believe that computers are the solution to all problems, I am a naysayer. There were things humans are very good at. Languages, for instance, that computers have a hard time with. It might have worked, but I wasn't going to try. Besides, I don't even know if there was a good Georgian Igrish translation suite available. I listened to the words, caught the venom in Leo's voice, caught the apprehensive pride in the caller, and heard the name Sergio and Dmitri several times over the course of the next few minutes. Sergio finally hung up. He shoved the small brick of a phone back into his suit jacket and glared across the bar. The bartender moved rapidly, pouring what could only be vodka into a tall glass and rushing it to him. I shifted my attention from Leo to the bartender. I watched him return to the bar and punch something into the point-of-sale register. I opened the register database and noted the entry, wastage 4. Leo didn't pay for his drinks, but his staff kept track of them. It was little details, such as these, that made watching the world through a monitor worth it. I sifted through the database, tracking and compiling data. Working with databases is timeless work. When you are in the groove, really moving the data, the hands on the clock move of their own accord. I reached for my sedative water and found the glass empty. I mixed another and returned to my work. The Opemapo Knoll growled at me, disturbing my concentration. The VoIP phone ID of Leo's caller was within range of the red square switch. I shifted my view back to the bar security cameras. The bar was full now, the lights dimmed, the camera's images all dusty green as low-light sensors worked their magic. It was hard to identify faces in the green murk. I stared, trying to find a face I remembered. I found I didn't remember many faces well. Most were inky blots of pink and brown in the windows of my mind. I rechecked the VoIP routing information. Leo's caller was definitely in the bar. I just needed to know who it was. Networks, be they electronic or people, need to be mapped before you can know where their strengths and weaknesses were. I opened a VoIP traffic flow monitor and tweaked it to send a test ring to Leo's mysterious caller. I watched the screen, looking for someone reaching for their pocket. There it was. I hooted in excitement. My shunt network monitoring suite began beeping. The beep was a long, harsh tone that rattled my ears. I was too excited. The aphasia shark was on the way. I grabbed for my glass of sedative water and took a long pull, never once letting my eyes stray from the window with the mystery man reaching for his phone. He was in a booth beside the door, the exterior lights throwing harsh patterns across the night-adjusted camera's feed. His head was turned from the camera. "Turn, you bastard!" I swore. Maybe it was my words, the force of my will, or the habits one forms across the lifetime of using a phone. But my target turned, as if by my command. "Gotcha, you son of a bitch!" I hooted ecstatically. The beep tone returned. I needed to settle down, lest my work would be finished before I got to the good stuff. Besides, I could take a break now. I knew who the mystery caller was. It was none other than David Chakava, the bastard nephew of Leo Chakava, the hidden half of the betrayal which culminated with Frankie's death, the number 2 asshole on my list of those who had to pay. Oh man, did I have some work to do. Firmware, Proxy is the second book in the Firmware pentology. That's 5 books, if you must know. It begins moments after Firmware Hijacked ends. So if you haven't heard or read Firmware Hijacked, this would be a good time to head on over to Colbyjack.net and either download the podcast on the audio side, read the episodes on the visual side, or download the Colbyjack Sunday Reader issues 1 through 20 in your choice of either EPUB or Mobi. Firmware, Hijacked, and Proxy are both available in ebook versions from our store at shop.colbyjack.net, amazon.com, and Barnes & Noble. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, and Proxy is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. If you're on a smaller screen, the button will be found at the bottom of the page. Firmware Proxy is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike 3.0 license. Do what you want with it, just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of 2 minds about the whole thing anyway. If you want to get social with me, I do mostly Twitter. So if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. Spelled the same as above, Colbytrax. We could sing that all night long. Thank you once again and have a wonderful week.